I will be talking about the disinformation epidemic that is happening right now alongside this real epidemic, pandemic that's happening around the globe. And I guess I have to address the elephant in the room because as I've been talking about this topic throughout the years, you try to stay away from specific people or specific political parties in an effort to be objective. But I have found that it's been impossible to ignore the elephant in the room, and that we just have to tell it like it is, that President Trump of the United States is a super spreader of disinformation. And we are seeing the effects of that. We are seeing that many Americans don't trust science. They don't trust the electoral system. We don't trust one another, as this article covers. We are seeing that we are so divided that we're unable to agree on essential facts, on essential truths. It's like America is split up into factions of people that literally live in a different reality according to their own set of facts. And this has been backed by a study that found that the single largest driver of coronavirus misinformation is from President Trump. This is out of Cornell University. They reviewed millions of articles, 38 million, and found that in terms of the infodemic and fake news or misleading news, a lot of it originates from the President of the United States. So we're watching. I'm here in Germany right now, and I see that the world is kind of confused. How is one of the most powerful countries in the world with advanced medicine and all of that, how are we unable to get this virus under control? And in fact, right now, the President of the United States has COVID-19. And we're seeing that disinformation, misinformation has consequences in the real world. It's not just fake news floating on the internet. That real people believe what they see on the internet. They see misinformation. They're unable to decipher whether or not it's true or false. And it has been amplified so much because of who is spreading this misinformation. And at this point in time, it does happen to be the President of the United States. And so when we talk about coronavirus misinformation, we see that a lot of it is about miracle cures, the Democratic Party hoax. All of this. I mean, a few years ago, we talked about this and we just thought, oh, this is so fringe. Nobody believes in this stuff. It doesn't have all this fringe conspiracy stuff. It has such a menial impact on society. They're just kind of weirdos online. But here we are today, and we have to face the fact that a lot of people do not live in a world of facts. They thrive off of misinformation. They believe misinformation. When it comes to miracle cures, it is everything from taking bleach, and it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud, but we really are here right now, where people think that drinking bleach might be a possible cure, or not wearing masks does absolutely nothing. And some people believe it's an actual hoax, that it is all invented to bring down the United States of America, that it is the Democratic Party that's behind it, and it's not a real thing. And so when you can't get a large sector of the population to believe in something, well, they're not going to take safety precautions and public health advice from proven leaders like Dr. Anthony Fauci of the CDC. They're not going to take that advice seriously. And so we're seeing that warnings from public health officials are being ignored. And it seems like this issue of disinformation, there's new news every day here in the US. Just yesterday, the FBI says that the governor of Michigan that they thwarted an attack on the governor of Michigan to basically these far right, they call themselves a militia. So they're armed. They believe in far right extremist ideology. They got very angry at the governor of Michigan and actually plotted online on social media, part of the way that they did this, to kidnap and then possibly kill the governor of Michigan. And you could see, if you trace back their communications, that a lot of it was that they festered in this other world where they need to defend democracy. It's very hard to actually describe because it's so bizarre and extreme, but we are living in that world right now. So, and this governor was very outspoken and was very strict when it came to coronavirus measures. When it came to locking down businesses and stopping the spread, she was especially aggressive in trying to control this virus. And so that led to some extremist groups, I guess, fighting back. And the president of the United States had tweeted in all capital letters to liberate Michigan. And some people really take these I guess that warrant or that command, or however you want to interpret it, seriously. And these people are armed and they are acting on fake news or exaggerated news or extremely hyper-partisan news. I mean, all of it is just snowballing into a form of extremism that is flourishing on the internet and now exists in real life and has become a danger to not only our public health, but to actual government leaders, and to democracy as a whole. And so going along from, it's kind of hard to separate the issue of disinformation. And I mean, it all feeds off of each other, whether we're talking about public health. There's so much disinformation online about the coronavirus, and now about voter fraud. We have this Washington Post article here has just describes how President Trump has unleashed voter fraud disinformation. He did it at the last presidential debate. He continues to do it when he gets airtime on Twitter, that basically that our electoral system cannot be trusted. That, of course, again, with the pandemic, a lot of Americans are voting via mail. So he has spread these unsubstantiated claims that we cannot trust mail-in ballots by citing sources that, ultimately, that it's not true. It's a lie. But it does benefit the GOP at this particular time to spread this conspiracy theory, because a lot of more Democrats are planning to vote via mail than Republicans, because Republicans, a lot of them have taken the president's advice that, this coronavirus is overblown. So something like only 11% of Republicans will vote via mail, via about maybe around half of Democrats plan to vote via mail. So now we're seeing all of this disinformation about voter fraud, how it is part of a larger plot to rig the election. And it's very hard to overstate how troubling this is, because we also have the president of the United States saying that he's not sure if he will actually accept the results of the election. And so that raises all kinds of questions on whether or not there will be a peaceful transition of power. He says we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to, essentially what that means is we will have to see who the winner of the election is. If it comes out in my favor, then I win. If not, then the election's rigged. And so that narrative has been spread by the president on, far right sites, on social media. It's been amplified. And this kind of goes back to my part of disinformation advocacy, is the role that Russian disinformation plays in spreading far right, but it's not even just far right. It is so mainstream now. As we saw, our president is one of the most, is responsible for spreading disinformation, probably when it comes to the coronavirus, when it comes to our election, all of that. It's coming from the top, essentially. And back in 2016, one of the big issues surrounding the outcome of the election was Russian interference. We saw that there was a sophisticated campaign to help elect President Trump, that Vladimir Putin, for one reason or another, thought that it would be beneficial for Russia to have President Trump as America's leader. So they were instrumental. We had the troll factory, spreading lies, disinformation, hyperpartisan news, all of that created this climate where there was so much chaos. And ultimately, the goal there was to help get Donald Trump elected. We know that was the outcome. And now we see that they're at it again in 2020, that they are helping to spread the false notion that mail-in voting is not safe, that it's not secure, and that whole process cannot be trusted. We're seeing that Russian disinformation, Russian media, bots, trolls, all of them are working together to amplify this message that mail-in voting doesn't work and that our election is likely to be rigged. And so all of this, I want to focus on the issue of conspiracy theories, because back when I had worked in Russian media, that seemed to be something that Russian media had amplified. There was almost like an obsession of covering conspiracy theories, some of these fringe ideas, bringing them to the mainstream, making it so that it spreads so much that more eyeballs are on these conspiracy theories. So no longer are they just on the fringes of the internet, but you're finding them on other media platforms. You're seeing people discuss it on social media. You're seeing it come out in more reputable news sites. And now we have President Trump retweeting conspiracy theorists, prominent conspiracy theorists. This one called QAnon now has been making a lot of headlines in the US. They essentially are a conspiracy group that alleges that there is a democratic cabal running the United States, and this is a weird aspect of it. They think that Hillary Clinton and several other prominent Democrats are part of a pedophile ring. And they seem to flourish off of trying to find ways to expose Democrats. It's all really ridiculous. It's hard to talk about even, but this is where we are. Again, this is where we are, and people believe this. And we have members of this group being amplified, being retweeted by, in some instances, the President of the United States and from those in his circle. Again, going along with the Russian operation, so we see here that this Russian operation masqueraded as right-wing news sites to target US voters. So this goes along with the Russian disinformation campaign and their goal of exacerbating existing divisions in the US. So here they can pose as right-wing sources, right-wing news sites, and they can spread false information that will appeal to President Trump and his circles, to other far-right news sites in the United States, to Fox News, and before you know it, a lot of this material, this disinformation, has been amplified to the point that it has it almost makes its way into reality, because we all have to talk about it, we all have to debunk it, and when something is repeated so many times and is so widespread that just by virtue of hearing it over and over again and having it become part of the political discourse, part of what we're talking about, a lot of people are going to believe it because it's out in the open now. And we're seeing that a lot of this disinformation has been able to flourish online due to social media. A lot of us are spending a lot of our time online now and getting getting our news online. And we're seeing that as more people get their news online, that it becomes that you're more likely to be exposed to fake hyperpartisan news, disinformation that originates from bad actors within the US and hostile foreign powers outside of the US that are amplified by Russia, in some cases Iran and China. But we focus on Russia because of how vast and successful their operation has been back in 2016, and warnings from national security officials that this is currently happening right now in the run-up to the 2020 election. So I'm going to come back on here. Stop sharing.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Okay, are you able to see me?
Yes, it's
Okay.
all good. Well, thank you
Okay, I
very
wanted
much
to like
for this.
pop out. Sorry.
Thank you very much for this. We've got a
Okay,
couple of minutes.
I just came on screen to give kind of my closing,
Sure,
just closing
let's do
remarks.
that.
I guess I wanted to talk about the responsibility that we all have in this disinformation era, and what we can do as business leaders in education, in politics, in media, whatever it is that, whatever sector that you're in, it's to understand how it works, to understand how pervasive it is, to understand to spread awareness so that we are all taking responsibility when it comes to news consuming, to sharing news, to spreading news, that we are all responsible news consumers. I don't know if my thing, if my screen had frozen up. Mine has frozen.
No, it's
Um,
good.
okay. And also, I just want to stress this commitment to intellectual honesty, and that we all have a larger role to play in this online ecosystem. And hopefully, we're all learning. We're taking a step back and we're learning from our experiences, and that this is just a big disaster waiting to, and we can all learn from it, and we can all adapt in business and social media, in all sectors of our life. We have to acknowledge this issue of disinformation and try to fix it.
All right, Elizabeth, we've got just 2 minutes left. So
Okay.
just one follow-up question on something that you actually mentioned at the end there, and I'm intrigued by your observations of whether that learning process is actually taking place. I mean, what is your sense of the trajectory we're on, particularly with regard to business? Because part of the problem has been that all of this pollution in the informational space has been enhanced, has been driven also oftentimes by the business model of the social media, right? By their algorithms and by their ads and whatever the system is, how it works, right? It's not
Right.
actually intentionally to pollute the environment, but the business model is such, right?
Mhm.
Do you observe, quite briefly, do you observe that there is a relatively, the trend is good? Are the businesses starting to become more responsible in this regard, or is this all going to be dependent on just basically legislation that the businesses will need to be forced to do the right thing rather than they will themselves do the right thing?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when it comes to the social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, Google, essentially they are businesses. So their goal is to drive traffic, to drive activity, to make it so there's more there, people are clicking, people are engaging. They want to maximize engagement. Is that always is that always does that always mean to amplify the truth? Not necessarily. So we are seeing that the business community has a huge role to play in all of this. And unfortunately, we are seeing that they only tend to take action when there's a lot of public pressure, when there's a news event or something egregious happens and you're seeing a lot of news coverage of it. So you're seeing that we are getting to the point where net legislation is becoming necessary because we're seeing the real life implications of that. So essentially these are businesses, but the question is, what responsibility do business leaders have to the truth and being part of, and just being part of this, trying to spread information and make it so that the world is healthier and thriving in many ways. And so that's not being part of the problem, and standing up and saying that we're making business decisions based on what is good for all of society. And that's amplifying truth and fact. And we need to try to say that that's good. That's good for us. That's good for everyone. That's good for business,
All right.
for people to believe in the truth and to amplify the truth.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us.